Chicago's very own WGN News.
As the president issues a flurry of executive orders and Elon Musk's Doge shuts down agencies, there are many questions as to whether they have the power to do so. Federal judges have issued restraining orders or stays on the orders, and that's led some in power to say judges don't have that right. Well, Suzanne Chad, political science professor and congressional scholar, is joining us now for a quick civics lesson. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, Micah. How are you?
Good. First of all, let's start off with the basics. There are three branches of the legislative government, here in the United States. Legislator, executive and judicial branches, right? Do they all have the same power?
It's important I appreciate you wanting to have this conversation. So the way we think about it is there's three independent and co-equal branches of government: the legislative, executive, and judicial. Now, when we talk about checks and balances or separation of powers, the way we tend to talk about it is separate institution sharing powers. There isn't one thing that one branch can do that another branch doesn't have some oversight authority or checking authority. But this is being pushed and strained right now very, very much.
And is the president, you think, pushing it to the limit? Because he's done a lot of executive orders since he's been in office, 3.5 weeks now? And the judges, the judicial branch is on him with every single thing. Can they do that?
Yeah, this is really important to note here is that executive orders inherently are not unconstitutional. The president does have authority to issue executive orders within limits when they supersede the Constitution, like overturning birthright citizenship, or go against existing law, or it breaches that sort of sharing of responsibility with other branches. It is incumbent upon the judicial branch to step in and say, hold on, we need to see if this is constitutional, if it is lawful. That is in the purview of the courts, absolutely in the purview of the courts.
Today, the president said he will abide by anything that the judge says, but he will appeal. What does he mean by that?
Well, so really the question right now that's been in front of the court is whether or not the federal grant freeze, they are now mandating that the president release those funds, but the court does not have an enforcement mechanism. The court can say do something, but they don't have any way to make sure that the president in this case does it. So right now what President Trump is saying, because it hasn't gone to the Supreme Court, that he will appeal. Eventually, this is going to end up at the Supreme Court, and they are going to have to decide whether this is lawful and constitutional.
But in the meantime, he made his executive order. The judge put stops on that order. He's going to appeal it. It'll probably go to the Supreme Court. So where do things stand? I mean, everything's in limbo, right?
Everything is in limbo, but the Constitution does cover all of this, right? So as long as the branches, in this case, the court, is acting still and not sitting back, I don't consider us to be in a full-on constitutional crisis. Now, if the court either didn't act or rolls over on these things that are so blatantly unconstitutional, then we have a problem where we don't have the checks we need. The Constitution is not covering all of the things that are happening, and we end up in a crisis where we don't know what institution actually has the authority to do anything. And so the limbo is not just the actual thing like the grant freeze that's up for debate, but it's what branch of government gets to do what. And are we leaning too heavily into a unitary executive that can do anything without checks from the other branches?
When does the legislative branch come in to look out for the people of the United States?
Well, so they should be acting now, and they are not. If I'm being very honest about this, Congress has the constitutional oversight authority over the executive branch, and also has the power for all taxing, revenue, and we call the power of the purse. And they are willingly giving all of this over to the president right now because his allies are controlling both of the chambers of Congress. They should be acting in their oversight capacity right now, and they're really just sitting back and letting the president kind of run through, which is something we haven't seen before. Both of the other co-equal branches seem to be a little bit more quiet than they should be.
Yeah, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson saying that the court should step back and allow the processes to play out.
It's interesting that the speaker says that, because I would argue that he's doing the same thing in a way that undercuts his own authority. And judicial legitimacy has been in question for years. And for now, the other elected branches, including the vice president, to say the courts have no legitimacy or role in this process goes against everything we know about the judicial branch's role in saying what the law is. That becomes very dangerous.
Suzanne Chad, North Central College, thanks for that civics lesson. We needed it.
Anytime, Micah. Thank you.
Bye.